Part 4, Autumn. Chapter 1, Kurt Olson Stalks, Eva Marie Taffy. Kurt Olson was awakened at 3 a.m. by the distinct twinkle tone that signified a voicemail message on a cell. It was from caller unknown, whom Kurt knew to be Leo Kelly. He used a first-generation emulator that sounded like HAL from 2001, A Space Odyssey. There is a package in your car. Bring it to your room before opening. Kurt Olson dimmed the bedside lamp he had turned on to check the phone. He poked through the curtains ever so stealthily. The sun had not yet risen on the Sawmill Lodge. Mr. Patel had recently discontinued all outside lighting as a means of cost control, and it took Kurt Olson a few minutes to gain his focus in the darkness. He studied the parking lot illuminated vaguely by distant light and slipped out to the Nugo. The dome light illuminated the interior as Kurt opened the driver's side door. Spying the duffel bag left on the front passenger seat, he walked around to the other side of the car and removed the package. He locked the Nugo and furtively crept back into his room. Kurt Olson's heart thumped as he opened the unsecured luggage that he had placed on his unmade bed. Shirts and blazers and hats and wigs served as crackerjack to the prize package in the middle that consisted of a Chinese 9mm pistol, 9mm ammo, 2 sets of license plates with accompanying registrations, and a bottle of Provigil with Kurt Olson listed as the prescribee. No sooner had he sifted through his bounty when his cell rang an unfamiliar tone. Kurt answered, and the HAL voice spoke again. Your credit limit on each of your 5 credit cards has been extended by $2,000. Please enjoy your vacation. Call ended. Kurt Olson was excited about the fallen cargo, especially the 9mm. That meant that he might not have to use his own service weapon. But then again, he did not trust Chinese hardware, and he wanted to test fire his new toy. He considered filling the bathtub with water, and he considered firing a round into the mattress, but he ruled out both ideas. Kurt Olson was too excited to go back to sleep, so he decided to take in a leisurely breakfast at a nearby Donuts and More to start his day. He felt a bit uncomfortable leaving his weapons unattended, but it didn't make sense to take them along. Besides, he had 2 hand grenades in a suitcase that he had brought along from home. He always left them unattended. He kept them triple wrapped in plastic to keep the roaches away, but they were routinely left alone. At Donuts and More, Kurt Olson ordered the pancake and waffle combo with artificial whipped cream, fake blueberries, and imitation strawberry syrup, accompanied by a bottomless glass of synthetic iced tea. He was not used to utilizing his cell as a web browser, but he stumbled along and was able to gather information about racial makeup of various Mississippi counties. Kurt Olson reasoned that in the unlikely event that he would be apprehended, he would fare better in a predominantly white jurisdiction. Ideally, he would cross paths with his target in a favorable environment, and it would be there that he would complete his mission. The waitress delivered the feast, and Kurt Olson turned his attention to matters gastronomic. Though his mission had not been completed, Kurt Olson celebrated. Leo Kelly still believed in him. He would not disappoint him this time. He would remove the burr from under the saddle and return to Virginia with his career on the fast track. Leo Kelly would congratulate congratulate him and put in a word for his promotion. Just yesterday, Kurt Olson had wandered into Eva Marie Taffy's campaign headquarters and volunteered to assist on her campaign. The staff tried to hustle him to the phone banks, and someone suggested that he canvass nice neighborhoods on such a beautiful autumn day. Kurt Olson had prepared himself for these time wasters and offered a counter proposal. Kurt Olson had concocted a story that he had run political campaigns in North Carolina and that he would love to meet with Eva Marie Taffy personally to discuss strategy. The assistant gatekeeper to the junior gatekeeper, a droopy-faced white man with droopy eyes, droopy suit, and thinning hair who was 32 but looked to be pushing 50, said, "Oh no, Miss Taffy does not give meetings." And he proceeded to explain that the mainstream media had it in for Eva Marie Taffy, and as a result, she did not share her itinerary with the press. Later that day, Kurt Olson would learn that the droopy guy was off base. True, the national press hated Eva Marie Taffy and would do anything they could to defeat her. The local papers were just as vicious and deceitful. But the Joseph Press was in their candidate's corner, and the campaign had funneled a lot of money to network TV affiliates in the form of advertising, and they responded with relatively objective coverage. Kurt Olson spent most of the morning and all the afternoon eating donuts and sipping Mountain Dew. His first objective was to chat up the flunky volunteers of hopes of finding a wormhole to his target. His second objective was to eat donuts and sip Mountain Dew. He would ultimately fulfill both objectives. Kurt Olson mostly interrupted the women making phone calls, but eventually he would chat with everyone on the premises. He would help himself to the free pizza and Mountain Dew that was served for dinner, and shortly thereafter he would gain the confidence of a chubby white girl with a bad complexion whose name was Daphne. Daphne told Kurt Olson that a loyalist who blogged at a site called blanketpundit.com posted Eva Marie Taffy's next day itinerary. Now, as Kurt Olson completed his breakfast, he checked the website to see what Taffy would be doing today. She would be addressing a PAYDAP convention in Biloxi at noon. Kurt Olson immediately checked the distance, driving time, the current time, and quickly determined that he could shower and brush his teeth and be in Biloxi before noon. Kurt Olson had heard about PAYDAP. They were retired cops with pensions who now spent their retirement years advocating for the legalization of all drugs. Kurt Olson's fellow drug agents hated PAYDAP, hated them, called them Brutus and Judas and Benedict Arnold. But the Joseph family loved this cuddly nonprofit and awarded the organization a Joseph Award of $1 million one year and gave a matching award the following year that was earmarked for distribution to each of the few hundred members. A few of the members had landed cushy jobs as drug enforcement correspondents at the Joseph News Complex. There were legal limits as to how much money John Joseph or the other candidates could shower upon their candidates. But today, the Joseph family would skirt the laws by sponsoring a PAYDAP convention with all media invited, as well as candidates from every political party. Of course, only members of the eclectic party would accept the invitation. With his credit card limits expanded, Kurt Olson was able to pay Mrs. Patel for another week of lodging. He was able to fill the Nugo with gas and launch his trek to Biloxi. He would then pull off at a Burger King drive-thru and celebrate the last leg of his trip with a triple Whopper combo jumbo size. It was a pleasant drive. No one had informed him that Mississippi was such a beautiful state, and Kurt Olson briefly considered moving there. At the hotel ballroom entrance, Kurt Olson flashed a phony United Press card so that he did not have to pay a membership fee. He sat in the back row in the middle of the level-seated room so he could observe as much as possible. Being that it was non-balcony seating, it was challenging to observe the attendees in the front row. Kurt Olson would tune out the eclectic party congressional and senatorial candidates and their state house speakers. They all droned on and on through a faulty sound system that encouraged cell phone texting and game playing on the part of the assembled cops. The audience was predominantly cop. They might be bleeding heart progressive cops, but they were all tired cops, and they all had that cop frown. Cops and media types, 100%. But then Kurt Olson observed someone walk in who did not belong. The man was from Central America. He was about 5'2", and he did not walk or comport himself like an American. He was dressed like a construction worker, except that his clothes were new and absurdly clean. Perhaps 5 minutes after the sore thumb arrived, another Central American entered the room. He was also about 5'2". He looked to be about 5 years younger than the Central American who preceded him. He wore a gray 3-piece suit and looked uncomfortable. He walked past the first Central American without making eye contact and seated himself on the opposite side of the room. Then a third Central American, this one about 40 years old, entered the room. He wore a brand new red and blue Ole Miss sweatsuit and an Ole Miss varsity jacket, which he kept unzipped. He ignored both Central Americans and seated himself directly in front of Kurt Olson. Kurt Olson privately labeled the trio the Village People because they wore different costumes, but everyone knew they were in the same group. He kept an eye on them as the speakers went wonk, 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 and he wished that he too could divert his attention to his cell. After sitting through the audio equivalent of a wisdom tooth extraction, the crowd was rewarded for its presence with the arrival of Eva Marie Taffy. Every handheld text machine, every handheld game, every handheld telephone instantly became video recording devices. The assembled rose and cheered and clapped as best they could. The next governor of Mississippi, Eva Marie Taffy. Kurt Olson was shocked at her reception, and he would be captivated by her speech. Without cue cards or teleprompter or notes, Eva Marie Taffy praised the gathering. You, sir, Robert Henry of San Diego, California. You joined the San Diego Police Department 33 years ago. You worked in narcotics until you could no longer ignore the inherent futility of your job. She recounted his stellar police career, mostly spent in the anti-terror unit. She highlighted his greatest achievements in thwarting bombers and solving a brutal machine gun attack on local sailors. But Lieutenant Henry writes that his proudest moment is when he became a member of PAYDAP. While other retirees are playing golf, Lieutenant Henry is trying to correct the worst mistake this country made in the past 2 centuries. She sing out 5 other distinguished officers as well. She knew their biographies, and her praise seemed genuine. The crowd gave her several standing ovations and cheered long after she left the stage. Media types seemed to feel contact high. Kurt Olson turned his attention to the Village People. They would each leave independently, not staying to mingle with the revelers. Kurt Olson would have a lot to think about on his ride back to the Sawmill Lodge, just outside of Starkville. He was curious about the Village People. He was contemptuous of PAYDAC members. He was intrigued with Eva Marie Taffy, but he agreed that she had to go. But getting rid of Taffy would not be easy. She was so damn popular. She had an entourage and she always attracted attention. It would be hard to catch her alone, and the clock was ticking. About halfway home, Kurt Olson recalled some heartfelt advice his father dispensed to his younger son. Make sure you get a job where you don't have to think. Kurt Olson wished he had listened to his father.